Hello and welcome to another update. In this one I'll be covering the Volatile and Bakhmut fronts. Starting out at the Volatile front, we see that the Russian forces are continuing their attacks in the direction of the Dacha area as well as the coal mine to the northeast of Volatile. Now I have discovered a new way to look at the mapping at. If we look at the normal Google Maps and then we go down to Volatile area, then we go in the 3D mode, then we can actually see it from a geological perspective. And we can see here around the coal mine area that the mine itself, where they're mining coal, is a hill where they can set up proper positions. If we look at it from a better perspective like this, we can see that there are some natural covers, and if the Ukrainians build up a defensive position up here, then it will be very difficult for the Russian forces to take this area, as the city itself would be left undefended, but all of the Ukrainian forces will be situated around this hill over here, as well as behind it. So if they create proper positions for the artillery behind this mine here, they can be protected from direct fire from Russian forces to the south. So we'll most likely see something similar to that, and a lot of artillery fighting between the two sides. As for the Bakhmut front, we see that the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Ivanivske from the Klishchivka area towards the forest here to the northwest, as well as to the south towards the north of Ivanivske. And at the same time, to the north of Klishchivka, the Russian forces are attacking the direction of Bakhmut from the south and to the southwest on outskirts of Bakhmut. As for the Ivanivske area itself, we see that the Russian forces are in a situation where they have to fight and take this hill here. The Russian forces, according to the latest Wagner PMC update, are fighting further northwest in this forest area, and as we can see, if they fight from the eastern area, they will be at a very disadvantage, as there's this hill they have to cross over. But further to the west, it levels out way more, so they can fight on flatlands rather than this hill area. So what we see right now is that the Russian forces are trying to advance and go around before entering this hill to the south, or actually from the western area they are going to take control of the forest line, which will give them a pretty good cover. And if the Ukrainians have built some fortified positions, trench networks here on this hill here, then they will be able to attack them from these positions and then advance further north and technically encircle them, while the Ukrainian forces will be forced to either leave this area or push the Russian forces back. And in that case, they will be retreating to Ivanivske, here to the east. And as we can see, the area to the west is on a high ground compared to Ivanivske. So the Russian forces will try to look to take the forest area and then cut off the road which goes between Bakhmut and Konstantinivka. And then they will attack Ivanivske from the west rather than straight ahead. But at the same time, if we look at Ivanivske towards the Klishchivka area, we see that there's a huge bug up there. But anyways, we see that this is also the high ground. So essentially, the Russian forces are attacking from the high ground from the south and from the west towards Ivanivske. So Ivanivske is in a very vulnerable area, as the Russian forces have the high ground to both sides. As for the Bakhmut area itself, the Russian forces continue advancing. We can see here in the central area, they've captured some of the high-rise buildings to the north of the southeastern part of the residential area, as well as two more streets, as they have captured this one and the next one next to it. And to the northern area, they completely captured the art winery, as well as some streets here to the west of it. And to the north, they captured this southern area. As for the northern Bakhmut area, we see that the Russian forces continue southwards from Blahodatne, as well as southwards towards Krasnogora, attacking the village from the north. And if we then go back to this area and move to Krasnogora area, Blahodatne area, we see first of all in the direction of Krasnogora, we again see the Russian forces have the high ground and are attacking from these positions. So they have the high ground where they are attacking from, both from the east as well as a leveled position from the north. So again, they have taken the geographical advantage before storming the village. And as for the Blahodatne area, I've previously reported that the Ukrainian forces built a defensive position and trench network to the west of Soledar. So we can see here that these two are the areas where the Ukrainian forces have set up defensive positions. And if we look at it at the geographical map, it is exactly these two areas right here and to the north of it. And if we look at it from this perspective, we can see that these are also located on a higher ground. So the Russian forces will have to fight an uphill battle against these defensive positions. However, as we can also see, is that these are very open areas. There's no large areas, forest lines, anything like that between the defensive positions and the Russian forces. They just have to go straight at them. So as soon as the ground is frozen, they can do a tank rush where they just rush against the Ukrainian positions. The Ukrainian positions will most likely have anti-tank gun missiles. However, the Russian forces with combined arms can storm that and take control over the area, either by completely destroying the defensive positions or by overrunning it. And that is that for this area. And then finally to the north of Soledar, the fighting continues in the direction of Rostolivka as well as Mykolaiivka, where the Russian forces have managed to capture Zakoi Vanzeti and are now fighting towards Mykolaiivka from this area. We can also see that there's the Veshyukivka River, which splits the northern part towards Siversk and the southern part. So they can attack Veshyukivka from the east after creating a defensive line by the river line, and they can continue attacks in the direction of Mykolaiivka from the railway lines, and they can then capture Rostolivka from the south and from the east by attacking from these two directions after capturing Mykolaiivka. Now, if we take a look at the current defensive positions of the Ukrainian forces and compare it to what I was suggesting, which is this defensive line by the canal and Chasiv Yar area west of Bakhmut, instead of continuing to defend Bakhmut. So we see that in the Bakhmut area itself, there's the river line right here, but other than that, it is mostly flatlands. There's this growing area here where it continues to grow in height towards the west of Bakhmut itself. So past the river line itself, up all the way until the river line, the Russians have the high ground, but past the river line, the Ukrainians will start having their high ground. So my suggestion to pull back from the river line and to the west of the Bakhmut city would give the Ukrainians the high ground in this area. Staying on the eastern part makes them fight a defensive battle where they have the low ground while the Russians are storming them from the high ground. So that was why I suggested it. And if we look at the canal line, we can see here that here's the canal, and all the way across the other side, the western side of the canal, is always on the high ground. Nowhere across the canal is the western side not on a high ground. So the whole canal line is just a long line that the Ukrainians can use as a defensive position, with both the canal between the Russian forces and the Ukrainian forces, but also the Ukrainian forces having the high ground everywhere. So they can just build defensive positions all across the western side of the canal, but instead they are choosing to hold the current defensive line in the Bakhmut and Siversk area. Looking at the Siversk area again, we can see that it is the same as in Bakhmut, where the Russian forces will have the high ground all the way to the center of the city, after which the Ukrainians will have the high ground. So splitting the city into two instead of holding the current position would be more beneficial for them, rather than holding the current position and trying to fight for every inch of the territory. The Ukrainians have to switch to fighting smartly instead of fighting hard. So that is the current situation on the front line. And that's all for this video. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed and have a great day.